If you believed the Duchess of Sussex had finally exhausted her astonishing capacity for commercial humiliation, her latest desperate reinvention reveals that beneath the catastrophic lifestyle rebrands, the empty podcast microphones, and the faux culinary charades lies a woman who consistently chases global success without a single ounce of genuine expertise or talent. I'm glad you've joined me as we begin to unpick the layers of this development. We must first turn our attention to the sheer, unadulterated farce of her so-called lifestyle empire, a venture that recently executed a clumsy, highly publicized pivot from the unspeakably clunky American Riviera orchard to the equally hollow and deeply ironic moniker, As Ever. The official public relations spin eagerly suggests this rebranding is a return to her authentic roots, a natural, overdue evolution of her defunct lifestyle blog, The Tig, where she once freely shared her rather pedestrian musings on wine and travel. However, a well-placed source paints a vastly different, far more frantic picture behind the scenes, noting that the panic behind her manicured Instagram posts became entirely suffocating when the Duchess realized the retail industry was quietly laughing at her initial trademark failures and her inability to secure a coherent brand identity. Instead of retreating from the spotlight to learn the rudimentary mechanics of the business world, she doubled down on her own profound delusion by installing herself as the chief executive officer. This was not a strategic masterstroke of female empowerment, but rather a move born out of utter necessity, because, as someone close to palace circles delicately noted, absolutely no respectable, proven executive would willingly take the helm of such a highly visible, rapidly sinking ship. You can almost feel the icy transactional energy radiating from her Montecito headquarters, where the atmosphere is described as a revolving door of exasperated professionals who quickly realize that genuine constructive advice is entirely unwelcome if it contradicts her grandiose self-image. Rather than meticulously testing the market or building a sustainable organic consumer base, Meghan opted for the most brazen, ill-advised shortcut imaginable by allegedly purchasing $18 million of her own inventory in a bid to manufacture overnight success. It is a staggering financial gamble designed exclusively to artificially inflate her relevance, creating a desperate illusion of massive demand to appease the increasingly impatient executives at Netflix who are demanding a return on their exorbitant investment. The sheer scale of this miscalculation became embarrassingly apparent when a website glitch miraculously exposed the exact, catastrophic numbers of her unsold inventory to the public, laying bare the uncomfortable truth that tens of thousands of overpriced items were languishing entirely unloved in a sterile California warehouse. A source within the inner circle has whispered of the mounting dread settling over her remaining staff as they stare down this literal mountain of unsold goods, knowing full well that the authentic, grassroots interest simply does not exist to move such an absurd volume of product. The inner monologue of the Duchess must be a chaotic storm of denial and simmering resentment, furious that the public is not blindly consuming her wares simply because she possesses a royal title she fought so bitterly to commercialize. This spectacular overestimation of her own popularity is the fatal flaw in her entire business strategy. She demands the immediate adoration and financial reward of a seasoned business mogul without ever serving the arduous, unglamorous apprenticeship required to build genuine consumer trust. The long-term consequences of this unyielding hubris are already crystallizing as she rapidly shifts in the public consciousness from a global luxury icon to a desperate, cautionary tale of celebrity overreach, fundamentally destroying her chance to ever be taken seriously in the retail sector by burning bridges with distributors who demand substance over meaningless, buzzword-laden corporate speak. Before we look closer at the true motives at play here, do ensure you are subscribed to the channel. As seasoned observers of this institution, we know the real story is rarely the one handed to the press. When we actually dare to look at the physical products that were supposed to revolutionize our homes and elevate our daily lives, the reality of "as ever" quickly descends from a high-end lifestyle aspiration into pure, unadulterated comedy. We were promised artisanal elegance and unmatched quality, yet what the Duchess actually delivered were overpriced jars of liquid jam that poured more like a cheap, watery syrup than a refined, carefully crafted fruit preserve. She followed this culinary insult with the utterly baffling release of expensive, edible flour sprinkles, a product so overwhelmingly pretentious and functionally useless that no serious working cook would ever require it in their pantry. Even more astonishingly, a source behind closed doors confirmed the profoundly humiliating logistics failure where her highly touted $64 luxury candles were shipped to paying consumers completely lacking a wick, rendering them entirely useless, highly expensive blocks of scented wax. Imagine the sheer audacity of charging your audience premium prices for a product that fails at its sole, fundamental purpose, while the surrounding pressure on her manufacturing partners must be immense, trapped in contracts with a founder who clearly values aesthetics for social media over the basic functionality of the goods she stamps her name upon. You can clearly picture the frantic, thin-skinned desperation of Meghan, furiously attempting to spin these catastrophic quality control failures as intentional avant-garde design choices, while her exhausted public relations handlers pull their hair out trying to put out the metaphorical fires that her wickless candles could never actually start. These are not merely the innocent, understandable mistakes made by a fledgling, well-meaning entrepreneur finding her footing. They are the direct, unavoidable manifestations of a woman who demands the title of a mastermind, but point-blank refuses to do the tedious, hands-on groundwork required to manufacture a reliable, high-quality product. To truly understand the depth of this commercial and reputational failure, one only needs to compare Meghan's hollow, frantic pursuits to the grueling, decades-long dedication of genuine industry icons, women who earned their absolute credibility through relentless, meticulous work rather than leveraging a marriage to a historic institution. Meghan desperately wants the credibility of an expert to simply fall from the sky and land seamlessly in her lap. But the open market is ruthlessly exposing the reality that aristocratic titles do not automatically translate into business acumen, talent, or lasting consumer loyalty. A longtime family acquaintance suggests that across the pond, King Charles and Prince William are observing this endless parade of cheap commercialism with a mixture of quiet relief that they are no longer legally bound to it, and profound, dignified dismay at the tarnishing of the family association. King Charles, a man who has genuinely championed organic farming and sustainable products for decades through his highly successful authentic Duchy Originals brand, must surely find the liquid jam and the utterly useless wickless candles entirely bewildering. The steadfast, dignified silence of the royal family stands in glaring, devastating contrast to the loud, desperate, and fundamentally empty clatter coming from California, highlighting the widening chasm between a life of quiet public service and a life of frantic self-promotion. The deepening isolation of the Sussexes in Montecito is palpable, as Hollywood elites and serious investors begin to view them not as exiled royalty to be courted, but as a toxic, radioactive brand that brings nothing but relentless bad press, endless drama, and exceptionally poor financial returns. The tragic, irreversible, long-term consequence is that they traded the historic reverence, quiet dignity, and lifelong purpose of the British monarchy for the fleeting, ruthless, and ultimately humiliating world of celebrity retail, leaving them hopelessly stranded in an ocean of unsold flour sprinkles and broken, empty promises. We transition seamlessly from the wreckage of her retail attempts into the absolute Netflix disaster that was, with Love, Meghan, a series that has recently been unceremoniously scrapped after only 2 seasons. While the official line from the Montecito camp attempts to frame this as a natural conclusion to a 2-season arc, the reality, as confirmed by a well-placed source, is far more bruising. The show was a complete and utter flop. Netflix executives, who once banked on the Sussex name to drive global engagement, were reportedly horrified to see the series rank a dismal 1,224th in their global viewership charts, struggling to attract even 2 million consistent viewers. The sheer audacity of presenting herself as a culinary expert while allegedly lifting fundamental recipes from Martha Stewart, such as that single-skillet spaghetti, has left the industry cold. To make matters worse, a source behind closed doors has detailed how the Duchess is now desperately pitching bite-sized holiday specials for Valentine's Day and the 4th of July in a frantic bid to stay relevant on the platform. But these proposals are reportedly gaining absolutely no traction. The corporate calculus in the Netflix boardrooms has shifted. The era of blank checks based on royal proximity is over, replaced by a rigorous demand for actual talent and audience retention, 2 things our Girl Scout seems fundamentally unable to provide. The staging of the show itself was a masterclass in artificiality, filmed not in the couple's own home but in a rented, sterile Montecito mansion, because the Duchess reportedly didn't want the common gaze of the cameras inside her private residence. This decision alone speaks volumes about the disconnect between the relatable domestic goddess she portrays and the reality of her guarded, hyper-controlled existence. A well-meaning staff member who was present during production described the atmosphere on set as icy and transactional, with Meghan's fixed, smiley persona often vanishing the moment the cameras stopped rolling. The inner monologue must be one of simmering resentment. Here she is, offering the world her authentic self, only for that world to collectively roll its eyes at the cringy, smiley rubbish being served. Even the inclusion of genuine culinary heavyweights like José Andrés and Samin Nosrat couldn't save the production. If anything, their presence only served to highlight the Duchess's own lack of skill. There is a palpable sense of irony in watching a woman who once occupied the upper echelons of the British monarchy, now reduced to learning how to wrap a present or arrange a flower from professionals who clearly possess the expertise she so desperately lacks. The pressure is mounting not just from the critics, but from the industry itself, as evidenced by the extraordinary reports that the Netflix legal team was forced to deny threatening a Michelin-starred chef who dared to give the show a scathing review. Whether the legal letters were real or merely the stuff of Hollywood legend, the fact remains that the Duchess's reputation for being unmanageably high maintenance precedes her in every kitchen she enters. Someone close to palace circles noted that Prince Harry's role in this culinary charade has been reduced to pitiful, awkward cameos, appearing as a man caught in the crossfire of his wife's failing ambitions. He hovers in the background, a ghost of his former self, while Meghan insists on being called Sussex rather than Markle by her guests, a move that a source behind closed doors described as a clear sign of a monstrous, unchecked ego. This insistence on royal status while simultaneously engaging in the most basic forms of commercialism creates a jarring, tone-deaf experience for the viewer who can see through the thin veneer of empowerment to the raw, naked ambition beneath. The long-term consequences of this televised failure are devastatingly final. With no 3rd season in sight and a rumored cookbook set for 2026 that is already being dismissed as styling over substance, Meghan has effectively reached the end of her road as a mainstream media personality. The public's patience for her year of learns, as she so loftily called it, has run dry. She is now relegated to the fringes of social media, forced to shill her as-ever products through bite-sized clips that feel more like a desperate cry for attention than a legitimate business strategy. By refusing to serve the apprenticeship required to become a true authority in the lifestyle space, she has ensured that her legacy will be one of missed opportunities and zero breakthroughs. The tragedy is that she truly believes she can skip the hard work and jump straight to the success of an Ina Garten or a Martha Stewart, failing to realize that their empires were built on decades of genuine skill, not on a foundation of stolen recipes and wickless candles. Moving from the visual ruin of her television career, we must confront the staggering intellectual vacuum of the Duchess's broadcasting attempts, specifically the quiet, ignominious death of her latest audio venture. After the high-profile wreckage of her Spotify deal, where she was famously branded a grifter by industry executives, many wondered if she would possess the humility to retreat. Instead, she resurfaced with Lemonada Media and a podcast titled, with characteristic lack of irony, Confessions of a Female Founder. The series, which debuted to a flurry of carefully curated press releases, was intended to position Meghan as a peer to the world's most successful self-made women. However, by June 2025, the facade had completely crumbled, with the Duchess announcing a hiatus that anyone with a modicum of industry insight recognizes as a permanent cancellation. A well-placed source has revealed that behind the scenes, the production was plagued by the same lack of direction and self-indulgence that sank her previous efforts, with listeners quickly tuning out of what many described as a one-sided lecture rather than a genuine dialogue. The inner monologue of the Duchess during these recording sessions must be a fascinating study in cognitive dissonance. She sits across from billionaires like Spanx founder Sarah Blakely, nodding along to stories of genuine struggle and innovation, while her own mind is likely preoccupied with how to pivot the conversation back to her own supposed hardships. The supreme irony of Confessions of a Female Founder lay in the jarring disconnect between the host and her guests. While women like Jamie Kern-Lima shared the gritty reality of building empires from their living rooms with blood, sweat, and genuine tears, Meghan offered little more than a polished, hollow word salad of empowerment buzzwords. An insider within the inner circle noted that several high-profile guests felt their own success stories were merely being used as a backdrop for the Duchess's ongoing project of self-sanctification. The atmosphere in the recording studio was reportedly stifling, dominated by a strict adherence to a script that ensured Meghan was never challenged or eclipsed by the genuine expertise of her interlocutors. This intellectual echo chamber is where her ambitions go to die. She has surrounded herself with yes men and high-priced consultants who are paid to tell her that her every thought is a stroke of genius, leaving her utterly incapable of the self-reflection required to create a compelling, authentic program. A well-meaning staff member whispered that the hiatus was actually triggered by a total lack of advertiser interest for a second season, as brands realized that the Meghan effect was no longer a golden ticket, but a lead weight that pulled their own reputations down into the murky waters of controversy. The surrounding pressure from the entertainment industry has become immense, as the Duchess now finds herself in the unenviable position of having no major platform left to broadcast her curated truth. She attempted to use the As Ever brand launch as a convenient smokescreen for the podcast's failure, claiming she needed to focus on her burgeoning business, but the industry isn't buying the spin. A source behind closed doors has confirmed that Lemonada Media executives were deeply underwhelmed by the engagement metrics, which showed that the audience was not listening for inspiration, but rather for the inevitable cringe factor. The long-term consequences of this serial abandonment of projects are profound. Meghan has effectively depleted her intellectual capital in Hollywood. She has proven, repeatedly, that she lacks the discipline, the insight, and the basic stamina required to maintain a professional partnership or an audience's interest over time. By consistently walking away from commitments the moment they require actual effort or face the slightest criticism, she has signaled to future collaborators that she is a high-risk, low-reward investment. As we look at the wreckage of these media ventures, the tragedy of her situation becomes increasingly clear. She is a woman desperately seeking the status of a thought leader while possessing no original thoughts to lead with. A longtime family acquaintance remarked that the Duchess seems caught in a permanent state of imposter syndrome, which she fiercely masks with a hyper-controlled public image. This constant performance is exhausting to witness and evidently impossible to sustain. The tragedy is that she truly believes her royal title grants her an automatic seat at the table of global influencers, failing to understand that in the meritocratic world of business and broadcasting, credibility is something you earn through consistent quality output, not something you announce in a press release. The loss of her podcasting platform is not just a commercial failure, it is a symbolic silencing of a voice that has, quite frankly, run out of things to say that anyone wants to hear. She is now left in the cold, staring at a calendar of cancelled seasons and hiatuses that stretch into an uncertain and increasingly lonely future. The grand synthesis of this saga brings us to a singular, unavoidable conclusion. The Duchess of Sussex fails not because of bad luck or poor timing, but because she persistently demands the crown of an expert without the willingness to serve the necessary apprenticeship. This recurring pattern of chasing shortcuts to success with seemingly zero effort, skills, or genuine talent has finally pushed her brand to the precipice of a complete and utter implosion. A well-placed source suggests that the inner monologue within the Montecito walls is one of mounting, frantic denial, as the realization sets in that a royal title cannot indefinitely mask a lack of substance. The surrounding pressure is becoming unbearable, with the $18 million in self-bought inventory for, as ever, standing as a literal monument to her overreach, as the demand from a skeptical public continues to dwindle. The long-term consequences are already manifesting as a permanent exclusion from the elite circles she so desperately craves. She is no longer viewed as a disruptive visionary, but as a cautionary tale of what happens when a briefcase girl tries to play at being a global business mogul without ever learning the rules of the game. The view from the United Kingdom, meanwhile, remains one of steadfast, dignified silence, which only serves to make the noise from California seem more desperate and shrill. While Prince Harry has reportedly been attempting a charm offensive with a love letter to Britain essay, the public sentiment remains at an all-time low, with the Duchess's favorability recently sinking to a dismal 19%. Someone close to palace circles has whispered that the King and the Prince of Wales find the recent reports of Meghan's Hollywood rider demands for a potential UK visit, including private chefs and a full security detail at Apartment 1A, to be entirely out of touch with their current reality. The atmosphere at Kensington Palace is one of quiet resolution. Prince William has reportedly distanced himself further than many realize, viewing his brother's world as a leaky sieve that cannot be trusted. The tragic irony is that while the Sussexes struggle to sell liquid jam and wickless candles, the monarchy continues to command the respect and popularity they so easily discarded, proving that true authority is cultivated through service, not manufactured through a PR machine. As the curtains begin to close on this particular chapter of the Sussex circus, the gravity of the situation is impossible to ignore. We are witnessing the final sputtering gasps of a brand that was built on grievance rather than gift, and on celebrity rather than character. The Duchess's refusal to build or earn any genuine credibility in her various fields, from podcasting to cooking, has left her with a portfolio of flopped projects and a reputation that is rapidly becoming radioactive in the world of high finance and entertainment. The long-term consequence for the monarchy is, thankfully, a strengthening of the core, as the public compares the frantic commercialism of the Sussexes With the steady, quiet duty of the King and the Princess of Wales, the value of the institution becomes clearer than ever. The Sussexes may have their as ever brand, but the royal family has the ever after of history and tradition, a legacy that no amount of flower sprinkles or liquid jam can ever truly tarnish. The reality we must face is that you cannot simply announce expertise. You must embody it, and the Duchess has spent her capital on the announcement while neglecting the embodiment. This pursuit of the superficial has cost her the very thing she moved to California to find: a sense of authentic power and global influence. Instead, she finds herself isolated, staring at a mountain of unsold goods and a schedule of cancelled dreams. Leave your thoughts below. I read every word you write. And if you value this unvarnished look at the monarchy, do ensure you are subscribed and share this with those who appreciate the truth.